April here with Free to Feed. It is my honor and privilege to be coming to you today to announce a new member of our Free to Feed team. Thank you so much, Kristi, for being here, for being the amazing advocate that you are. And I personally know you. We have talked for years, and so I am crazy proud that you were recently went through, not recently, like went through the process, because the process is forever. Like a quick note for
So long.
how long it is to earn your IBCLC. But I have known you through that process, and I'm super crazy proud of you. So one quick note to that. Two, I'm really incredibly excited to introduce you to everyone. So please, from here, tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey, what brought you to Free to Feed, and what brought you to do that long path to become an IBCLC.
Thank you for that. My journey to become an IBCLC started when I had my first kiddo, Ezra, and I was in the military, active duty Marine Corps. Um, and the LC comes in and she's just like, "So how's feeding going?" Like verbatim, those are her words. And I was like, I looked down at Ezra and I was like, I don't know. I think it's going okay. And she goes, "Okay, great. If you need me, call me." And I'm like, wait, like, I don't know how it's going though. Like, you didn't look at anything. And I was just like, is this the way lactation is supposed to be? And, you know, then I got roped into the whole, like, she wasn't stooling. And they're like, "Oh, no, breastfed babies can go like weeks without having a bowel movement." Red flag. Like, now I know red flag. And, my mom gut was like, I don't think that that's right. So, just all that. And then her doctor, we found out at like 10 months, she had a tongue tie and a lip tie. We got her lip tie released, which fixed the gap in her teeth, and that's it. And she still wasn't stooling like every day like she should have been. So, I was like, okay, I don't want any moms to ever have to go through this. Like, I don't want families to go through what I went through. So that led me to starting my journey. We moved to Arizona from Texas, and I reached out to Dr. Lober, who is the associate director of the lactation program at ASU. So I reached out to her and I was like, how do I get started? Like, what do I do? And she kind of just walked me through starting the 95 hours like at ASU. And then I did that. I did my 14, I didn't need 14 health science classes. I only needed like a couple. So I did those at community college. And then I finished all that. And then it was time for my internship. So I started my internship, and then I found out that I was pregnant and I ended up having a loss. So I was like going through a loss, and then like I found out my mom had cancer. So I ended up taking a year off of my internship because I found out I was pregnant again with my second kiddo. And Lily got here, and I still waited like 6 more months because I didn't want to leave her because she was an allergy kiddo. So that was super like, oh, okay. Like, and I'm like so thankful that she didn't have like blood or like any other like really, really like severe like side effects to it. And I did an elimination, and I worked with Annie, and she's incredible. And we figured it out, and I was sad I had to give up dairy and like all my favorite like food, but I can live without cheese now, so I'm okay. So, it's not that serious to me. So, and that led me to like, I mean, I've known you for years, so, and we've always talked, and I'm like, okay, like how can I become better at like learning about this so I can help other families too? And then I finally ended my internship, and I sat the exam, and I passed, and now we're here.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot to talk about in there. First,
Yeah.
again, kudos. That's incredible. And I am so it's so heartfelt, and it's also it's also bittersweet, right? These journeys that we go on where our passion becomes a passion of necessity, right? That we experience something and we're like, there is better to be had. There has to be better to be had. And so we start down this path. And that's exactly how Free to Feed was created as well, right? There's just a need, a really deep need for something better in the space. And I also want to like tip my hat to the all of the IBCLCs that have been through similar journeys that decided like, yeah, I want to be that better IBCLC, or I want to be that better provider and go down that pathway. And in a space that, you know, oftentimes then we learn why often it isn't better, right? That like oftentimes it's the systems that are in place that set us up for a lot of failure. And so I also want to make like a nod to that as well as, you know, we navigate this journey and trying to make things better. And we're like, oh, wow, this is really hard. And I definitely get it now. And then the other thing I want to like tease out some of the pieces that you mentioned about your journey. Marine. Okay. All right. So a Marine, hello. As a soldier, so not a Marine, but a dirty Army soldier. Yeah, hats off to you. That is amazing and phenomenal. Did you start your family during or after your service?
During.
Okay. Yep. So similar like journey where, yeah, I've navigated the like pumping in weird spaces, and in the military until very recently is just kind of recently started implementing policies for lactating individuals. And I would imagine that you didn't have very much support early on in your lactating journey while still in the Marines. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong there, but I would imagine that was your experience.
I had to fight tooth and nail to be able to, one, get off of the flight line. I worked on jets, super unsafe for lactating women. Like, hello, it like OSHA was like, what are you doing? Like, no.
Absolutely.
And I was like, walking around with the Marine Corps order in my pocket every single day when someone was like, where are you going? I was like, I gotta go pump. And then I had leadership like, can you put your pump schedule on the whiteboard? Absolutely not. I'm not putting my pump schedule on the whiteboard so everyone can see when I'm like going to pump. Like, no. And I have no shame. Like, I'm not ashamed of having to pump, but like, I was 1 in 2 women in my shop. No one needs to know when I'm going to
shop with like dozens of other individuals at minimum. Yeah.
So many. Yes. And so I finally got moved, and like it was like way better. But then if my Gunny ever sees this video, one day he goes, why is it taking you so long? And I was like, sir, because it's just, that's how long it takes me to pump. Like, and there's no, like, I'm happy that it was in 2019 and there was like in the order, they actually had for expressing milk in the order. Thank goodness.
Yes.
And it was like, you can take as long as you need to express your milk. And there was no like time restrictions on that. So that was good. And I'm happy I went to like better leadership like after I left like my shop. So was I sad to not work on jets anymore? Absolutely not, because it's gross. I'm happy I don't do that anymore.
Yes. One, again, that's amazing and incredible. And oh man, yes, I have navigated that as well. The like pumping, and when, for those of you who may be listening who are like orders in your pocket when you're talking about, oftentimes when there's like some kind of deviation is often the way that it's looked at. It probably shouldn't be, but like the way it's looked at, if there's some kind of like deviation to like the schedule or to your appearance or any kind of thing like that. And another example of that would be like a soldier or a Marine who like is allowed to have a little bit of a beard, for example. Mm-hmm. And that's a deviation from like what you're supposed to do or you're supposed to look like. And so you will have a literal like piece of paper in your pocket that has a random person's signature that nobody actually has ever met. That will say this soldier, Marine or airman, whomever, is allowed to have 1/4 inches or 3 millimeters of hair on their face. And they'll walk around with this in their pocket because they will get stopped by everyone under and be like, soldier, why do you have hair on your face? same type of situation happens in the pumping world for those who are in the military, where like you've got, your bag of all your pumping stuff, and it does not come in like marine camo,
No.
right? It does not. It's like this cute little like pink bag, right? Or this adorable like what a black bag with yellow, piping on it or whatever. It's cute as all get out. And we that it does not go with your uniform, right? Like, and there's rules around like when you have a backpack, how many like arms it's supposed to be on and what color it is and if it's allowed to have logo. So like it's a thing. So you're bebopping around with like this pump. And from my own personal experience, for a little while with my second daughter, I had supply issues. And so because I was on such I think my elimination diet at one point, like my calorie intake wasn't enough. And so my supply started to dip and we were dealing with feeding refusals, and so I went and got the hospital grade pump. And that thing, if you've ever seen it, the container, it
I
comes
have one right here.
oh my gosh, it looks like you're carrying around the nuclear codes. It's so big. It's this giant gray monstrosity. And so when you're carrying stuff like that around and you have to like leave your job at a different cadence or whatever than the normal, you have this piece of paper, these orders in your pocket that like allows you to be like, look, I am allowed to do the thing I'm doing,
So wild.
which is why
I'm allowed to do this, like to feed my baby.
yes, I'm allowed to feed my child. Thank you very much. And not only do you have to like carry this around, but because it's in your pocket, no one knows. And so they have to like, and they don't have to, they choose to stop you and be like, where are you going? What are you doing? Why are you doing the things that you're doing? And then there's no education on it. And so in the same way that like there's very little education for any of these deviations, right? There's very little education about like why somebody would have a specific set of orders that says that they could have a beard because of X, Y, and Z. There's no education as it relates to the pumping world, just like you said with your gunny that was like, why does it take you so long? And you want to frankly be like, well, why does it take you so long to take a dump?
Yeah. Right.
And are you going to put that on the schedule? Like, are you scheduling that out? Like your dump schedule? Are you putting that on there and exactly how long it's going to take you? And if it takes you longer than that, are you going to make up for it for the next?
Right.
Oh, like what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And so kudos to you, mass kudos, and what a crazy space. And here's to like that continuing to get better. I love anytime that I see the news that like maternity time is improving and things like that. Like I'm like, yes, keep going, keep
win. Yeah,
huge wins. And I too have I've pumped in a Humvee before because yes, in the back of a Humvee because I ran range control back in the day when my oldest was breastfeeding. And we would go out in our Humvee, but like the ranges that I was in charge of were in the middle of nowhere. So it would take like several hours to like get out there and go to every range. And so I would go out with like a cooler and my pump and everything else. And there was no accommodations for that. And so I would literally have to be like, all right, guys, I would jump into the back of the Humvee while we're driving like range to range. And I would take my top shirt off, right? I have a t-shirt underneath. And I'd flip it around and put it on top of me, kind of like a nursing cap.
Yeah.
And I would pump while we're bebopping around in this Humvee that has no doors, right? Cooler next to me, right? Right with my boobs out, just like for reference, like a Humvee is like the world's worst Jeep, if you will, like oldest worst Jeep in the world without any doors, bebopping around, trying to like not flash the world, and just like doing what we got to do, right? And that is not in a vacuum. There are many soldiers, airmen, Marines that I've talked to that have had similar experiences of like, yeah, I've pumped in a tank before, like just getting stuff. So my bra's off to all of the individuals who are listening to this that are like, yes, yes, in there. Okay, so went through all of that, and then you decide like, okay, I'm going to go down this pathway. I'm going to become first a CLC, right? So we go and do the training. So it's several hours of lactation specific training. And then you also had to get additional courses, right? And so that's where like you did the community college pieces, because and I've gone through the list, there's a very specific list of like, these are the courses you need, a minimum of certain credits in like sociology, right?
Yeah.
It's like, there's very specific guidelines. And I would say that unless you have, an RN,
Unless you're like a nurse.
unless you're a nurse or something very similar, you probably don't have already like this magic combo of courses. So you go to school for these courses, and then you have to do the internship for 1 billion hours of
500.
500 hours. That's forever. 500 hours of like shadow work, basically, right? Where you're working alongside an IBCLC on all of this. Okay. And then you take an exam.
Yep.
Okay.
Then you apply, and then you still have to wait like 6 months, and then you take the exam, and then you have to wait 3 more months, and then you get your results.
Oh my gosh. That's forever. That is forever.
Yeah.
Which was amazing. And so now, officially, IBCLC, which is incredible. And also, on top of that, navigating second kiddo. And with second kiddo, food reactivity issues. You and I already knew each other just in like the social media space of breastfeeding, food reactivity, trying to help parents navigate parents who are in the trenches, right? Like, who are just navigating a lot of misinformation, struggles, things like that. So from there, get connected with Annie, who, yes, is absolutely amazing, the best, on an elimination diet, right? In order to get to some solutions with your second kiddo. Tell me, how old is your second kiddo now, and how are they doing?
She's 17 months now, as of Monday, actually. So, and she's doing a lot better. I know I reached out to you like a couple months ago, and I was like, could they like revert back to like having it? So I don't actually think she ever outgrew it, whatever it was. And so I've just like still been on an elimination diet, like, and I'm like, okay, well, I just won't eat dairy ever again, or that's fine. So.
They could feel that way. They could definitely feel that way. And so, and I cannot believe she's 17 months old. I remember when you were pregnant.
Yeah.
And talking about that. Oh my goodness, crazy. So you then receive your IBCLC, and we get to talking about one of the like huge pieces for me as we build our team and we bring on additional providers, is that I feel like it's so incredibly important for individuals who are working with food allergy families to have experienced it, right? Like, there's something really special about being able to talk to someone when you're in the trenches who like really gets it. And I feel like I can teach food reactivity and the science to anybody. Like, I can teach you, about consults, and I can teach you the journey of going through a consult with a family, and the top triggers and the next steps and the symptoms. I can teach all of that to literally anybody. What I can't teach is empathy. Like, I can't teach understanding like how very hard it is when you say like, I just feel like maybe I'm just never gonna eat cheese for the rest of my life. Like, yeah, you and I both know probably you're gonna eat cheese at some point. That's how it feels right now, and I can't teach that to somebody. And I know that when you hear that from somebody else, instead of saying like, no, you're gonna eat cheese, like, just wait, and being like, yeah, I feel that. Like, I feel that in my soul. I get it. And that sucks. And my heart goes out to you. So teaching like that empathy, right, is something that something that like you have to experience until you've had to read 4 billion ingredient decks. And until you've like read something that says dairy free, just to find dairy in the actual ingredient deck and be like, mother.
Yes. And you're like, great, I ate that and I accidentally just dairied my kid. And now it's going to be a horrible day. And it makes you feel terrible. And you're like, I know that I am more like diligent than that. And I'm like reading everything and I'm reading labels. And it's like, like not eating like at food places. And it's like, can I go eat there? You're looking up menus online of restaurants. It's like, what can I eat? Like, hey, does this have dairy in it? 'Cause it's not like listed, but it said it might be. And like people think you're like, okay, you look like a lunatic. Why are you asking me that? And it's just like, okay, people are allergic to things. Like, I have to know.
Yep.
So,
Yep, for sure. And yeah, and that's something that you have to experience to like
right.
really like get it, to really understand the struggle that is in the midst of all of this. So that is it's the bittersweet, again, another bittersweet part of the journey of like we to give the amount of support that somebody really needs. We almost have to go through this like
Yes.
traumatic event ourselves. And that's important. So you navigate lactating on an elimination diet, breastfeeding now, correct?
Yes.
Currently, yes. So 17 months. That's amazing. That's incredible. And now an IBCLC. This is the official like launch of you as a free to feed consultant, which is super exciting. And for those of you who are listening, what that means is that she's gone through the extensive training that free to feed has all of our consultants do, right? And each of the consultants typically come to us with that personal experience, and then we back it up with all of the science. Usually, it's like, here's my personal life experience, here's my expertise experience, and then we pile on top of that, like, here's all of the science and the research that you need to help support families who are navigating this. And then the resources, right? Like, here's the meal plans, here's the all of the ways that dairy can be listed on a dang ingredient tag, right? To support the families who you're working with. So when you are like first meeting somebody new who may be kind of in the trenches, just starting out, what would you say is like your first thing that you would want them to know right out of the gate?
There's 1,000,000% a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, they're going to get through it, and I'm like tearing up, but like, they're gonna get through it, and there are amazing resources to like help them along the way. So like, they're never alone. They're truly never alone.
Yes, 1,000,000,000%. And yes, you won't make me cry too. Yeah, so that it gets easier, that it gets better, whether your child outgrows or not, which many of our kiddos do. But whether your child outgrows or not, like, it will get easier, it will get better. And if you're like really in the thick of it, and I feel that in my bones, right? That like exhaustion, the sleep deprivation, the worry, the stress, there's nothing in the world that I can think of that is in the same even ballpark as like things that we put into our own mouths to nourish our own bodies impacting our child and in a way that causes them discomfort. And the amount of nuance and things that impacts, like our relationship with food, our nutrition, our mental health, our physical health, their physical health, our relationships. When I say trenches, like, I mean in the trenches. And I can appreciate on an extra level that like you can appreciate my analogy just as more as a Marine. Because like that's what I mean when I mean in the trenches, like it's like you feel like you are at war, and you are in the trenches, and it's those same feelings, and it's and there's a lot. There's PTSD. There's we're already navigating postpartum, right? So we've got postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression. Some of us are navigating disordered eating. There's so much there. And yes, to say like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. and it may feel like it's a train that's going to run you over. Um, and, and it's not. It will get better. It will get better. And these families, they deserve better. Which is why we're here, right? And we are here because families deserve so much better, from our healthcare systems, from our communities, and more. So I can appreciate that. Is there anything that, like, really starting out, um, is there anything that you wish you could, outside of, the points of, it getting better, which is most certainly important, anything that you would want to go back and tell, like, your previous self, like right before having the first kiddo and having the LC come in and be like, cool, you think it's going well, high five and take it off.
Right. Right.
What would you tell yourself, like right before having your first kiddo, before you started your first lactation journey?
Oof. Definitely, definitely take a breastfeeding class with an IBCLC, not in the hospital. Um, and also just like signs and symptoms of what to look for, like with an allergy, because like the parents being gaslit all over the place saying kids can go 10 plus days without stooling because they're breastfed is not normal, and that's a red flag. So I wish I would have like known that, because I was like, oh yeah, like breast milk doesn't have waste. Like I fed into all of that because, professionals were telling me, and that's what everyone else said. So like just really knowing like, oh, it's actually like a problem. Like we need to be stooling every single day. So I think like I wish I would have done more like actual research and like went to a professional first. Like, because an IBCLC would have been like, no girl, like no, she's not having any poops for 10 days. No. That's a problem. Yeah. So, and then like when she did, it was a blowout. And it's like,
Of course.
that's a red flag. Like, it's such a red flag. So, yeah, I wish I could go back in time and be like, because obviously Ezra had an allergy too. And I just didn't even know it because I was being told it was fine. So, I feel so much mom guilt, like almost 5 years later, knowing that I was hurting her. And like, I'm not gonna cry, but like,
Yeah.
oh, that like really, really hurts me as a mom. Like I was hurting my child, and like everyone was saying like it was fine, and it wasn't fine. So I still feel guilty like to this day that I didn't like dig more. But now I'm like, I'm not letting anyone do that to me or my kiddo. So
Or other people.
or other people, like, or other moms. Like, no, not on my watch.
Yep. I totally agree. And I understand that, like, that guilt, that shame that we have. And I think it's really important and it's hard. It's so hard to give ourselves grace. And so some of the like tools that I've used in the past have been, one, continuing to try to remember that like we do the best we can with the information that we have at the moment, and that we were not properly supported, right? Like we were not properly supported, which is where we get into the space of like, I'm going to make sure that as many people as possible are properly supported, because this is BS and it needs to be done. So, that a little bit of solstice there of like, I did the best that I could with the lack of support that I had in the time, and the lack of proper information, right? Knowledge is power, and I didn't have the proper knowledge. And so pushing forward from there, and it is still hard though. And it would be weird if you didn't have those feelings, right? I would be more worried about you if you were like, oh yeah, I feel great about the fact that my kiddo wasn't stooling for 10 days and that this all went down. I would be like, okay, well, I'm gonna come visit because you need a hug and maybe to see somebody. And on the other side of that, right, is the fact that that's not normal, right? The fact that when we think about, as you mentioned, wanting to tell, previous us to like go to a breastfeeding class that is outside of the hospital, there's reasons for that. And that being that oftentimes in the hospital settings, from, what I've heard from IBCLCs at least, is that oftentimes they're not properly supported in that space, right? They're not properly supported as it relates to like what they can provide and the time that they have available and what their caseload looks like and well their educational materials that are allowed and what they can and cannot talk about and gag orders. Like there's a lot going on as it relates to all professionals who are within certain systems that are just not built for the patient to thrive. And so all to say that like in the space of saying, consider courses that are outside of a hospital, consider additional support from an IBCLC that may be outside of the hospital, not to kick any of the IBCLCs that are in the hospital down a peg by any means, because they're absolutely amazing ones and they're absolutely necessary. And we love them. And oftentimes they're not properly supported. And that then trickles down, right, accordingly. And so I think that's super, super important to mention too. And when we look at, how do we make it better? Right? How do we make it better? How do we make it supportive moving forward? I think it's a lot of like that collaboration effort, right? How do we bring all of these people together? And yes, I agree. I wish that I had gone to literally anything before having our first kiddo. I think we went to like one like pre-birth thing at the hospital. Yeah, Peter and I did before we had June, and it was like, you're gonna have a baby. Here's like a pamphlet about breastfeeding, which was not helpful at all. And then we got home and I immediately had latch issues and pain and bleeding and I was just like, oh, I guess this is just the way it is. Yeah, I guess like people just don't talk about the fact that when you first start bleeding, you first start bleeding. That's not true. It wasn't even breastfeeding for me. It was just bleeding. When you first start bleeding, you're gonna be breastfeeding. When you first start breastfeeding, you're gonna be bleeding and in pain and crying and none of that's true. None of that is true. But, and it can be so much different, so much better. And so massive like double stamp on that. From there, so the last like big piece that I want to ask is, as you think about your journey and how you want to help, future families who are navigating lactation issues and food reactivity issues and any combination of the two, because it's very frequent that we're navigating both, right? I would say more often than not, we have some magic combination or more than one thing, unfortunately. So as you're thinking about that, is there anything that we didn't touch on today that you think is important to bring up?
I would say that if you're having any sort of like you brought up, like pain, bleeding, you immediately need to go and see an IBCLC and your baby needs an oral eval, like immediately, because something's not going right. And I think I would love to like have society be like, we're not normalizing pain, okay? We're not normalizing pain.
Yes.
And then I can get into the whole like science of like soft tissue like on each other, but like no, pain is a red flag and we're not normalizing that. So
Yep. I like this interesting like thought process of saying, if there's something that like you or your baby are navigating that like we would not as a society accept in an adult,
right,
what is happening, right? And so an example of that is like, if you personally were not stooling for 10 days, I would be very worried about you. I would be like, she's gonna explode, and get her in to see somebody immediately, and she needs imaging, and oh my gosh. Or, on our front with our oldest, there's excessively bloody stool, like massively bloody stool. And my husband has ulcerative colitis. And so when he had bloody stool, he was admitted to the hospital and had all these tests and everything done. And then when my daughter had bloody stool, they were like, consider removing cheese out of your diet. And I was like, what?
Yeah. Yes.
That's it. You just get sent home. That's it. And yeah, when I'm having pain latching and my nipples are literally bleeding, if my husband's nipples were bleeding for any reason, they would take care of it and they would help him figure it out and get it fixed. Whereas for me, it was just like, yeah, I mean, I guess you just, need to keep going and it'll get better. And that's oftentimes where parents are just placated and told like, oh, it'll just get better, right?
Right.
Just wait. It'll eventually get better. And for
Mhm.
some of us, like, yeah, if I wait long enough, they will get better because they will eventually outgrow it. But then that's still 6, 9, 12, 18, 3 years, even, months to years of pain, discomfort, unnecessary inflammation in our gastrointestinal system and our skin, and my lights just went out. So we're going to go with mood lighting now, with unknown long-term impacts, right? There hasn't been the proper research yet on like, what are the long-term impacts of
Right.
what happens when, my kiddo doesn't school for 10 days for the first 8 months of their life. What
Right.
is happening, right? And so here's some more research on that. I totally agree. So with that, Kristi, welcome officially to the
Thank
team.
you.
You've been working so hard in the background, so this is also always super, super fun to be able to like, ta-da!
Right.
After all of that hard work and shadowing and training that you have done. With that, if anybody is interested in booking time with Kristi, you can do so at freetofeed.com/consults. She is available there for you to book with her. And we are also getting you up and running with the Lactation Network, so it can be covered through insurance as well. So with that, Kristi, is there any like last parting words that you want to leave with any of our listeners?
Always trust your mom gut because you're always right.
Yes. Boom, boom, boom. Like bang on that drum a billion times over and over and over again. If you feel like something is wrong, it probably is. And whether you are a first-time mom and this is day one of you having a baby, or you have 10 children and you are like mom of the year, you know best. You know when something's wrong, and it's innate. It's built in. And I felt that too, right? I felt that like my child is inconsolable. She just cries all of the time, and this cannot be normal. And just that feeling, like, and it's an ick. It's an ick feeling of like, this can't be it. So like, no one would ever have babies ever.
No one.
No one in their right mind would have babies and recommend other people have babies if like this was the reality that we all live through. And so I love that. If you are feeling in your gut like something is wrong, push, advocate. It's not easy. And I will be the first to say, like, it is not an easy road to have to push and advocate and learn. I feel like you've got to, even you may be feeling like you have to do this alone, and you don't. You don't have to do this alone. We're here to support you. Kristi is here to support you. I'm here to support you. You can book a time with her. And from me personally, I want to let everybody know that no matter where you are in your journey today, anywhere in your journey today, whether you are unsure if your baby is dealing with food reactivity, if you are well on your other side of that light at the end of the tunnel, no matter where you are, you're doing an amazing job. And I'm so incredibly proud of you and all of the hard work that you've done. I hope you give yourself a little extra grace and a little extra love today. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.